Welcome back, everyone. We hope you found your breakout sessions informative and insightful. For now, please do find your seats and settle down. The program will be resumed shortly. To all of our delegates, welcome back. Please do find your seats and settle down. The program will resume shortly. Thank you. Once again, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back. Our panelists and moderator are actually settled in on stage already. So if we may, invite all the delegates who are still outside, step back in the ballroom, find your seats, and settle down. The program is about to begin. The program is about to resume. Thank you. Welcome back, everyone. To everybody who are still outside, come on back, bring in those cups of coffee. We hope you all had really, really good breakout sessions. Can I hear a yes? Oh yeah, okay, that was an enthusiastic one. I had no doubt the one in here. Breakout session number 4, I think, was really good. I heard them fired up with their activities and presentations. We hope you had the same experience in the other areas. But for now, allow me to move things along because we have 3 more plenary sessions before we call it a day. And as you can see, our moderator and panelists are already seated on stage. So let me get to it. This session is called CAP 2.0. Strengthening the Pillars of Procedural Fairness, where we will hear insights on how different jurisdictions are approaching procedural fairness reforms and how these efforts contribute to more robust and credible enforcement systems worldwide. And guiding it, we have our moderator, Dina Kalai from the Department of Justice, Antitrust Division, United States of America. Dina, if I may, ask you to give us a wave. Thank you. And she is joined by 2 speakers, Martin Snoep, Authority for Consumers and Markets of the Netherlands, and Mondo Mazwai, Competition Tribunal, South Africa. Ms. Dina, the floor is yours.
Salamat.
Thank you.
Magandang hapon po. Kumusta ako si Dina Kalay? Nagtatrabaho ako sa US DOJ. And now in English. My name is Dina Kalai, and I'm a Deputy for International Affairs at the U.S. Department of Justice Antitrust Division. And I'm very excited to be here today to talk about the ICN Framework for Competition Agency Procedures, known as the CAP. And I'm joined by two individuals who are very well known to all of you in the international competition community. To my immediate right is Ms. Mondo Mazwai. And Ms. Mazwai has served as the chairperson to the Competition Tribunal of South Africa since 2019 and has been a member of the tribunal since 2013. She has over 24 years of experience in competition law in both private practice and a public service. She obtained her B. Juris degree from the University of the Western Cape and her LLB degree from the University of KwaZulu-Natal. To my left is Mr. Martijn Snoep, and he's been the chairman of the Netherlands Authority for Consumers and Markets, the ACM, since September 2018. And prior to holding that position, he spent 28 years in private practice in one of the leading Dutch law firms. And Mr. Snoep obtained his law degree from the Erasmus University, Rotterdam. Now, as many of you know, the Department of Justice was one of the key drivers behind the CAP. And not only because it's a key value in the US legal world, but also because we believe it is key to improving the quality of agency work. And I hope we can have a discussion about that here today. The whole ICN community came together to work on convergence towards procedural fairness principles. And we focused on 8 key principles: non-discrimination, transparency, timely resolution, confidentiality, conflicts of interest, proper notice, opportunity to put on a defense, access to legal counsel, and judicial review. So let us start by hearing from our 2 panelists, and then we'll have a discussion. So Ms. Mazwai, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon, colleagues. It's great to be here with you all. It's always great to see old friends and new friends in this growing community of competition practitioners. Let me first start by thanking the ICN for the invitation, and also thank our host, the Philippine Competition Commission under the leadership of Michael Aguinaldo, for what is already a great conference and for the warm welcome we received at the reception yesterday. We got a real sense of the Philippine heartbeat and the spirit of it, and we look forward to more. The great thing about visiting people in their home country is that you get to see how they live, their history, what's important to them, and their values. Importantly, you see similarities and differences between your own cultures and your own values. The CAP principles can be seen in much the same way. When we know the principles of procedural fairness that apply in any particular jurisdiction, we all, as the competition community, benefit. We break barriers, not to markets, as we are familiar with, but we break information barriers and build understanding. We create certainty, clarity, transparency, and predictability. Before I speak to the specific CAP principles, I think it's important to briefly remind colleagues about the competition regime in South Africa. We have a 3-tier system. We have the Competition Commission, which you are mostly familiar with, which is the investigative body for both mergers and prohibited practices. And then we have the Competition Tribunal, which hears matters that are referred to us by the Commission, and the Competition Appeal Court, which hears reviews and appeals from the Competition Tribunal. And ultimately, decisions of the Competition Appeal Court can be appealed to the Constitutional Court if they raise constitutional issues. This framework is important because some of the CAP principles fall within the remit of the Competition Commission. For instance, who, when, and how investigations are conducted fall within the remit of the Competition Commission. Where the tribunal comes in is in the adjudicative part of the system, and for that reason I'll focus on procedural fairness as it relates to adjudication, as the tribunal is the first court of instance in competition matters. And I think it's probably obvious to say that it's important that the rules of engagement are clear before parties get into the courtroom. And the reason for the benefit is manifold, but I'll mention a few examples. One is that we avoid the need to reinvent the wheel. Parties know when they come before us what they are entitled to look at in terms of preparing their cases, whether they are bringing or defending a case. This contributes to the speed and efficiency in which we can handle matters, which I think is beneficial to the entire community, the business community. Even for us, we'd like to move on to other matters, and so that brings speed and efficiency. It helps firms also to decide whether they wish to challenge a procedural step before we get into the merits. It removes an element of surprise and suspicion, and ensures that there's trust and confidence in the competition system. So with that background, let me turn to the fundamental elements of procedural fairness that apply to us. And I think the first one that is probably the most critical, being a constitutional democracy, is the right to be heard. And the second principle that relates to that is the issue of confidentiality and access to confidential information, because in order to be heard, parties need to have the information that they need to either bring a case or to defend a case. In South Africa, there's a seminal decision by the Competition Appeal Court in the Unilever matter, where the Competition Appeal Court dealt with confidentiality and its importance. And the Competition Appeal Court said that it would render a hearing profoundly unfair if the legal representatives and economic advisors of the Commission were denied access to the same information that the Commission has when it brings its cases. We'll come back to the confidentiality principle in a moment. The third issue is the one of independence and impartiality by the decision makers. And here the issue of conflict of interest becomes relevant, and the Act is very clear that members who sit on cases at the tribunal should not have a conflict of interest, and if they do, they should recuse themselves. Members at the tribunal are either lawyers and economists, and that principle is generally observed on a regular basis. The other issue relevant to impartiality and independence is, as you will be familiar with the South African legislation insofar as it's unique in that it's got the Minister of Trade, Industry and Competition as one of the parties that can appear before the competition authorities in merger transactions. The hearings happen in public, open public sessions, and the minister makes his submissions before the competition authorities like any other party. So this is an important principle of impartiality and independence. There's also the issue of transparency in decision-making. All our decisions are written and reasoned out. The legal and the economic principles that we have applied are clear for everyone to read. And then the final point is independent review. I've already mentioned that decisions are appealable or reviewable to the appeal court and the constitutional court. If maybe then I can come back to the issue of confidentiality, because I think it's one of the most crucial elements because of the need to protect proprietary information, while at the same time ensuring that parties that come before us do not suffer an asymmetry of information which would render the proceedings unfair, as we heard from the Unilever decision by the Competition Appeal Court. So the Act provides for parties, when submitting information to the Commission or to the tribunal, to claim information as confidential and to explain why that information is confidential. And confidential information is strictly defined as trade secrets that are not publicly available. And so once that claim is made, the Commission is obliged to treat that information as confidential. The tribunal similarly so. And it's all well and good while the Commission is still investigating for the information to remain confidential. Where it gets sticky is when the Commission then seeks to refer the matter and wants to rely on that confidential information. What the Unilever principle has then evolved to become is that it's established a principle where legal representatives and economists advising parties before us are entitled to that confidential information, provided that they sign confidentiality undertakings, which are strictly drafted by all the lawyers that are involved in this, and they know what would best serve their clients. Then the Commission can also, once that confidential undertaking is signed, parties can then have access to that information. Often the debate is about the relevance of information, and that can really result in long protracted hearings determining what is relevant and irrelevant. But once the legal representatives are of the view that they need that information, then they can apply for access before the competition tribunal where there is an issue about the relevance of that information. And so data rooms are set up where parties can go and view information. Sometimes it's virtual data rooms, sometimes it's physical inspections of documents, and that ensures that information is kept as confidential. I think, let me stop there for now, and then we can continue.
Great. Thank you very much, Mondo, for these great opening remarks. Martijn, over to you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Dina. And I need to declare first something. You're now seeing a stand-in for Andreas Munt, because unfortunately he couldn't make it. So these are some pretty big shoes I need to fill. So I hope you will bear with me. We all miss Andreas, and unfortunately he couldn't be here. But hopefully next year he will be again, if the current fuel crisis is finally over, I hope. The second declaration I need to make is that I come from private practice. So I was trained as a lawyer for 28 years. And one of the first things that you learn as a lawyer is that the way to substance is through procedure. And that's why it is particularly important that at the ICN we have the CAP, and we have a set of rules, principles that we try to adhere to for procedural fairness. And reading through the 8 principles of procedural fairness, and I can highly recommend to refresh your memory if you haven't read them for a while, is that they really stand the test of time. These 8 principles that were enacted at the ICN level are still spot on. So I would say compliments to the US Department of Justice, to Dina, and to the others at the ICN who did a fantastic job in creating these principles that are a guiding light, I think, for all of us in the competition community. One of the core principles of the CAP on procedural fairness is impartial enforcement. And impartial enforcement includes independent enforcement, independent from politics, independent from companies, and independent from budget. And that is an incredibly important principle for all of us to keep the legitimacy of our system alive. And the best guarantee for independent, impartial enforcement is that it is fact and evidence-based, and that it remains fact and evidence-based. And I cannot stress enough how important it is that we all hold this line. And there is, in all religion and faith, in ethics, there is one golden rule, the golden rule. And the golden rule is treat others as you would want to be treated by them. So if we want our companies and our citizens to be subject to impartial and independent enforcement outside our borders, we have to do the same. And breaking the line of independence and impartial enforcement is contagious and therefore dangerous. Because if one authority breaks the line, the other authorities will think, well, if they do it, why don't we do it? And therefore, the opportunity at the ICN together to once more emphasize how important independent and impartial enforcement is cannot be stressed enough. And despite the fact that the 8 principles have stand the test of time, there are 3 areas where I think there is room for further discussion, further thinking, as these documents, they need to stay alive, and further iterations along the way can be necessary also to keep the discussion alive. And to bring that discussion to the table, I propose 3 areas of thought, 3 areas of further thought. First, if you read the principles, they are very much focused on the defendants of our enforcement actions. Third parties do play a role in the principles, but a fairly limited role. And I think if we want to reflect on the principles a bit further, maybe we want to give extra consideration to the role of third parties. That can be complainants, that can be the victims of anti-competitive harm, and what role do we give them in the procedure? And that's important because ultimately for the legitimacy of our system, for the impartiality of the work that we do, it is always important to listen to all sides of the issue. Not only the defendants, but also the complainants, the victims. They need to have their role in the process in order for a procedural fair procedure, for procedural fairness. So the role of third parties is something that we could reconsider or could re-emphasize in a next iteration of the CAP. The second role is, the second theme is access to the actual decision makers. So one of the principles in the CAP is active engagement. And something also I learned as a lawyer, but I think that's also probably the experience of many people around the room that have been subject to a decision by someone else that influences your life, how important it is to see that person in the eye, to be able to express your defense, to express your opinions to that individual person prior to making a decision. And I know that in many, in some, I don't know exactly how many, but in some countries it is unusual. But in order for procedural fairness and for the acceptance of a decision by an enforcement agent, it is crucial for the parties and their representatives to have at least one moment before the person who actually signs the decision. And that can be in a meeting, that can be in a hearing, that can be in an informal setting, but you have to give the subjects of our decisions, of our enforcement decisions, their day in court, so that they can see eye to eye with who is taking the decision that is influencing their lives or their commercial practices. It's also important for the enforcer to do that. So to make sure that the things that we do, that we realize that they have an effect on companies and that behind companies are actual people. And that we see these people eye to eye to discuss, to hear, to listen, and ultimately to have a fair process. And then the third element that may require some further consideration is there are lots of, there are 4 important principles in the CAP: impartial enforcement, effective enforcement, transparent enforcement, objective enforcement, and I would like to add a 5th element, and that is reflective enforcement. And what do I mean with that? The way we work, and in the previous sessions and talks, we often discuss how we need to experiment as enforcement agencies, how we do trial and error, how we test certain things. In merger control, we predict the future. And the courts, fortunately enough, give us some latitude. They give us some space for experimentation, for trial and error, for crystal ball glazing, for looking in the future, for making predictions. But I think the flip side of it is that we be reflective of our actions and look whether our predictions actually came through. That what we said that would happen, whether that actually happened. Whether we said we imposed a remedy and that would lead to that result, whether that result actually occurred. Or whether we should change the remedy and impose a different remedy. So reflective enforcement requires ex post evaluations, something that Bill already mentioned earlier today. And these ex post evaluations of our own actions, learning from our own actions, are a core element of procedural fairness. It makes our work better, but it is also fairer towards both the defendants and the complainants and the victims, the third parties that play a role in our process. So to conclude, the 8 core principles of procedural fairness are fantastic. Again, great insight by the people who wrote them. Second, there is some room for improvement and further reflection and further discussion also in these groups. So please come to the breakout session on Friday morning. It's killing time, but it's a great session, and that allows us to jointly discuss these improvements. There may also be others, but the 3 I mentioned earlier, I hope they'll be part of the discussion Friday morning, I think at 8:30. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Martijn. Your suggestions very much resonated with me, and I can share that in the U.S., especially the second one that you mentioned, we always have a face-to-face meeting with the parties before taking a final decision to do something, and that's important. I also agree with you that the CAP principles are important for legitimacy of the decision-making of the agency, but they're also important just for the pure quality of the decisions. So it's not really just for the parties, it's for us, the agencies, because it's a quality standard. And by following them, you make sure that the decisions are sound. And if they're not sound, it is more likely that the court is going to reverse you, and then you might have spent 2 years of work on a case that is not a sound case. You could have used your resources better. So I just wanted to highlight that the benefits to the agency from following these principles. And in terms of keeping the CAP active and top of mind, I also wanted to remind everybody that there's an opportunity to have formal consultations between agencies on the CAP if there are concerns, and that's a tool that is open and would be interesting to see how it's used. And with that, I thought maybe we'll talk a little bit about examples of CAP aspects that you may find particularly important or especially challenging to implement at this time. So, Mondo, over to you.
Yes, perhaps just a comment on Martijn's 3 areas. I couldn't agree more. As South Africa being, in a sense, a latecomer into competition regulation in the form that we have it, we have the benefit of having drafted rules that provide for most of the things that Martin is suggesting. Third parties in our regime, in the context of mergers, are allowed to apply for intervention, and they can have access to information. And that's very important because it enables us to arrive at robust decisions where information is heard from all sides and all stakeholders that are affected. So that's an important thing. It links up to a challenge that sometimes comes, and that's a question you're asking. The challenge, and I mentioned earlier that having procedural fairness and the rules clear from the beginning is that it gives speed and efficiency in decision making, but it can also be a downside in that it can cause delays because third parties come and intervene and they seek access, sometimes to copious amounts of documents and volumes upon volumes of documents, and that does tend to delay matters, but it is an important principle of fairness that we still have to adhere to. Access to decision makers, I mentioned earlier, our hearings are held in public, and we have cross-examination and parties basically having to eyeball the members of the tribunal, and we get a good feel and a good sense of the parties that are before us. And on reflective enforcement, we also have, the Commission primarily does this because there is a monitoring provision, both in mergers in terms of the conditions that we impose as the tribunal, but also just general market studies and things like that that help to reflect on the decisions that have been made. I think one of the challenges, as I mentioned, is that the processes can be delayed if one is to observe procedural fairness. However, a careful balance is required to ensure that we still arrive at robust decisions, and that's what we strive to do, really.
Great, thank you very much, Mondo. Martijn, examples?
Yeah, maybe a bit of experience also at our agency. So when I started 7, 8 years ago, at the agency, it was the practice that in merger cases and in cartel and abuse cases, a hearing was held, and there was usually a sort of a hearing officer, someone from the legal service who was not involved in the decision making, who was a sort of procedural chair to the hearing. And there was no board member at the hearing. And when I joined the agency, one of the things I did was change that practice. And the feedback we got from all parties involved is that they really appreciated that at least one of the three, but preferably all three board members are present at the hearings so that they can listen to the parties, all parties, not only, because that's a second change. Traditionally, it was only the defendants that were heard during the hearing, but we changed that and also let third parties have access to the hearings so that it is more of an open court session where also parties can react on one another. The final point I'd like to make is that with respect to access to file, is that access to file is burdensome. It's hard work, but it is exceptionally important from the eye of procedural fairness. We changed our system from a kind of a paper-focused access to file to a digital access to file, which makes it more manageable. And with the court's approval, we introduced confidentiality rings. So that for certain types of information, it is virtually impossible to protect full confidentiality and give full access rights. And there we allowed a setting up of a confidentiality ring among lawyers and economists that sign NDAs, still have access to the confidential information so that they can check, for example, our merger models or our other important input for the decision that we make. And at first we were a bit worried about what the courts would think of that, but fortunately also our highest administrative court allowed for this procedure, taking into account the fact that full access was practically impossible and also not very effective. but on the other hand, respecting the procedural rights of third parties and the defendants to have access to the evidence on which we base our decision.
Great. Thank you very much, Martijn. We actually promised everyone that we'll try to stick to our time. So I guess just before signing off, I want to encourage everybody to take a look at your CAP templates and make sure they're up to date because it's been, I think, 7 years now since the CAP has been adopted, and especially if you had changes in procedures and legislation, your template may not be current. And we're actually updating the US one as we speak, so I encourage everybody to do so. And with that, I thank Mondo and Martijn very much, and see you soon. Thanks.
Cheers. Thank you very, very much, Ms. Kalai, Mr. Snoop, and Ms. Mazwai. May I ask for a photo opportunity, please? With each panel, we do have a photo at the end, and we thank you for your time for taking up CAP 2.0, strengthening the pillars of procedural fairness. After this photo opportunity, we're going to keep the ball rolling with regards to the next plenary session that is now entitled Strategic Planning and Prioritization, Building Agile and Forward-Looking Agencies. So now, thank you again, Ms. Kalai, Mr. Snoop, and Ms. Mazwai. Taking on the stage, may I invite the next moderator, Ms. Irene Sharp of the Hellenic Competition Commission of Greece. Ms. Sharp? Good afternoon. Allow me to introduce the rest of the speakers for this fourth plenary. We will have the Competition Authority of Kenya's Mr. David K. Kemei, the Korea Fair Trade Commission's Mr. Byung-gi Ju. From the Hungarian Competition Authority, we have Mr. Chobo Bolaj Rigu, and the Competition and Markets Authority, United Kingdom's Mr. Chris Previtt. Lastly, Polynesian Competition Authority of French Polynesia, Ms. Johan Pire. I'm sorry, I wasn't able to clear your names. Usually I have a chat with our speakers before I introduce you. But as we do keep the ball rolling right now, because we are down to the last two plenary sessions of the day, everybody still with us? Yes, you're in Manila. We're gonna make sure you have a good time. We just want to make sure you're still able to absorb information coming in. Second to the last, may I ask Ms. Sharp to now please take her place on stage, as well as our speakers. That is Ms. Irene Sharp, Mr. David Kemei, Mr. Byung-gi Ju, Mr. Chobo Bolaj Rigu, and Mr. Chris Previtt, and Ms. Johan Pire. Ms. Sharp, good afternoon. Correct. Ms. Pire? Please, come on up. Good afternoon. We leave you now with our moderator, Ms. Sharp. Take it away, please.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the plenary session on strategic planning, prioritization, and building agile competition agencies. Today's discussion comes at a particularly relevant moment for competition authorities worldwide and addresses one of the most pressing questions facing competition authorities today. How do you decide what to do and what not to do when demands on your agency are growing faster than your resources? Across jurisdictions, agencies are being asked to do more, often with limited resources, while responding to increasingly complex markets, digital transformation, economic uncertainty, geopolitical pressures, and growing public expectations. In this context, strategic planning and prioritization are no longer administrative exercises. They are fundamental institutional tools that help agencies decide where to focus, how to allocate resources, and how to maximize impact. We have 5 competition authorities on this panel, drawn from 5 very different contexts, different sizes, different economies, different institutional histories, but united by a common challenge: strategic prioritization. How do you move from reactive, case-by-case enforcement to a forward-looking, impact-driven approach? And how do you stay agile when the world keeps shifting around you through trade disruptions, digital transformation, and political uncertainty? You will hear from Kenya, the United Kingdom, Korea, Hungary, and French Polynesia, each offering a distinct vantage point on these questions. Without further delay, let me hand the floor to our first speaker, David Kemei, Director General of the Competition Authority of Kenya. David, as new pressures arise, how does the Competition Authority of Kenya prevent strategic priorities from being diluted as new issues, complaints, and external demands emerge over time?
Thank you very much, Irene, for this opportunity. Let me join the previous speakers in congratulating PCC for this well-organized ICN annual conference. And thank you too for the invitation. I will go straight to the area where I'm supposed to intervene in this aspect of strategic planning. I want to say that for Competition Authority of Kenya, we are now implementing the 4th strategic plan, having begun our operations way back in August 2011, meaning that sometime August this year, we'll be celebrating 15 years. So we have 5 key areas which we call the strategic pillars that we'll look into in the next 5 years. And these are, in the interest of time, allow me just to list them because I'll be mentioning each of them as I move along. The first one, ensuring competitive markets. The other one is ensuring consumer protection. And then we have research and advocacy, together with stakeholder engagement, and finally, institutional excellence. Let me just give also the highlights that in terms of our targets for these 5 areas. The first one, in these 5 years, we want to increase, we want to scale up a number of cases that will handle as far as ensuring effective markets are concerned, from the average of around 20 at the moment to an average of 35, giving about a target of 145 cases that we need to handle over the 5 years. When it comes to merger control and determinations, we would like to ensure that we have 100% determinations of all the merger cases that come before us these 5 years. And we'd also aim to reduce the mergers that are actually implemented before the authority approves them. When it comes to consumer protection, we'd like to increase by over 50% the cases that we investigate and resolve over these 5 years. When it comes to research and advocacy, We want to handle more than 30 cases in terms of market studies, in terms of market inquiries, and so forth. And then when it comes now to the aspect of stakeholder engagement, we want to increase this by 70% by raising public awareness of competition law and how it benefits the stakeholders in the region or in our jurisdiction. Now I move to what we do in planning by having strategic alignment in our case. Strategic planning in publicly endorsed development frameworks. In other words, it gives CAK the ability to prioritize decisions and institutionalize legitimacy beyond itself. And what we take into account to ensure that we have a strategic fit and alignment, we take into account our constitution, which is supreme, and then we also take into account the government agenda of the day. We also look at the African Union because of the AFCFTA that is coming up in our region. We also look at SDGs. We look at our Kenyan Vision 2030, which is almost there. And we put all this together to help us in prioritizing and in coming up with strategic targets for the next 5 years. What are some of the outcomes we expect over the 5 years? We want to ensure that we embed competition enforcement. We also want to align our work to continental and regional integration. We are members of the East African Community, which is 8 member states. We are a member of COMESA, which has 21 member states, and we are one member of the African Union, which has about 52 countries. So we participate and align our strategic plan to ensure that we are a catalyst of integration and economic trade in these blocks for the benefit of our economy and our people. In these 5 years, we want to anchor enforcement outcomes in poverty reduction, in addition to strengthening policy with sector regulators and regional agencies. In my jurisdiction, we are actually we have the mandate to regulate the entire market and also protect consumers in the entire country. But we still have sector-specific regulators whom we must work together to make sure that where we have the overlap of jurisdiction, we are able to operate smoothly so that each regulator is able to achieve the mandates assigned to them. Going forward, how do we move from volume to value? I think that's what I'm actually supposed to tackle as well. And one of the things we're going to do is to prioritize sectors with likelihood for wide consumer arm. Number 2, we will be looking at markets with systemic importance and have propensity for anti-competitive conduct. Thirdly, we will deploy data-driven enforcement. Fourthly, we will prioritize advocacy and research in these 5 years. Again, we also will be deploying risk-based planning in our strategic plan. This will actually shape our prioritization policy. And what we intend to do that, first of all, we will adopt tools that allows us to have risk-based case selections in each area. And one of the things we'll be doing is to ensure that we undertake market surveillance. And this will be continuous. Number two, we'll have case trend analysis so that we identify patterns by sector, by farms, by conduct type, and geography to help us actually zero in on areas that have wider impact. And then thirdly, we'll deploy sector intelligence by using deep contextual knowledge of value chains to guide our enforcement. How then do we sequence? We intend to do advocacy first, then it will be followed by enforcement. And that will involve advocacy and evidence building to start with, followed by legislative reform. We have proposed some amendments that are being debated now in Parliament, and we expect these amendments to give us the legal mandate to tackle digital markets, as it were. And then we are also enhancing our enforcement tools. We have already set up our forensic lab, and we will continue to equip it to be more potent to help us in undertaking investigation in digital markets. In other words, we are saying we are preparing for digital and future markets by undertaking what I have said. The challenge we have is growing reliance on online intermediation platforms and data-driven business models. And e-commerce is replacing market dynamics and creating new forms of market power beyond what conventional market shared metrics can capture. I think that this has been discussed in the previous sections, and our response is to recalibrate our traditional competition tools to ensure that enforcement remains effective, proportionate, and economically sound. Quickly, in the interest of time, in preparing for digital and future markets, number two is that our focus is on modernizing our analytical toolkits, assessing market power beyond conventional market share. Number three is that as an agency, we are doing our best to distinguish between innovation-driven scale and competitive exclusion, so that innovation can find space to have the influence, but we are able to make sure that anything related to anti-competitive exclusion is reined in. Number four is that over-enforcement in digital markets is damaging, just as under-enforcement in traditional markets. Lastly, we are building our internal capacity to deal with digital market analysis. I think I should stop there because there are additional questions that will follow.
Great.
So thank you very much.
Let me also ask, in what ways has strategic planning improved your engagement with government, courts, and sector regulators?
I'll go straight to that one and say that what we have done as as far as government is concerned, is to align our enforcement, competition enforcement with broader economic and development objectives. Our government came up with a blueprint for these 5 years. So what we have done is, in our strategic plan, we have aligned our enforcement strategies in the key sectors that the government is giving priority. When it comes to our courts have really supported us in enforcement and has strengthened the legal rationale behind our cases. And they build jurisprudence that will help in deciding future cases that are competition and consumer protection related. As far as sector regulators is that we have built and we continue to build a strategic relationship through a memorandum of understandings to help us make sure that we are able to work together to ensure that consumer issues and competition aspects are actually dealt with without us conflicting in the process of carrying out our different mandates. Thank you very much.
Thank you, David. You gave us a compelling account of how a young but ambitious authority has built strategic discipline from the ground up. We turn now to a very different institutional setting, one of the world's longest established competition agency, the UK's Competition and Markets Authority. Chris Brevet is a Counsel General at the UK's Competition and Markets Authority. Chris, how does the CMA use data to identify and sharpen enforcement priorities?
Thanks, Irene. And first of all, thanks very much to the Philippine Competition Commission for the incredibly warm welcome, all the fantastic planning and preparation that's gone into this conference, which I'm sure we're all enjoying. Thanks also to the Agency Effectiveness Working Group, and particularly you, Irene, for hosting and moderating this plenary session. I mean, it's great to be able to talk a little bit about the topic of building an agile and forward-looking agency. This is a challenge that I think it's fair to say the CMA's needed to rise to over the last 18 months, and we've been on quite a journey of change in that period of time. And it's something that we're continuing to reflect on. I think all agencies need to continue to adjust to the geopolitical and macroeconomic context that is constantly evolving around us. So I want to say a few words about that journey of change. And I think it starts to build a good story about how we're well placed to pivot our resources so that we can adapt to the ever-changing set of circumstances that we find ourselves in. And I'm going to take us back, if you'll bear with me for a brief history lesson, to the summer of 2024 when we had a change of government in the UK. And we were hearing very clear feedback at the time when the government changed hands from businesses and investors, both internationally and domestically, that there was a lot to commend about the UK's approach to competition and consumer enforcement. We're independent from central government, our analytical and evidential rigor, and our transparency in general terms, all getting very positive feedback. But we also heard other feedback, which was how we were going about operating our regime could have a chilling effect on the case for investment in the UK. By not having due regard to the impact of our processes and the impact that they have on businesses, and there being considerable uncertainty in their view about how we go about looking at their businesses and how we go about looking at mergers and competition enforcement and consumer protection. And a general perception that our approach was heavy-handed and insufficiently connected with commercial reality. And the feedback was clear, that our approach wasn't about changing the fundamentals of protecting consumers and promoting competition, but it's about our approach. That was at risk of undermining the investment case in the UK and therefore, in their view, the case for economic growth in the UK. So it was on the basis of that feedback that we worked hard to develop what many of you will know as the 4 Ps framework. And that amounts to pace, predictability, proportionality, and the process of engagement, all very much about how we go about our work, moving faster, being more targeted, engaging more collaboratively, and really understanding the case that was being put to us by businesses, being clear with them about the outcomes that we're expecting to reach, and taking into account the impact that our work has on businesses. And the 4 Ps, they're not just a soundbite. Last year, we made over 75 improvements in total across our full toolkit. So that's merger control, competition enforcement, consumer protection, digital markets. And we've surveyed many of our stakeholders since then to find out their reactions to how we've got on. And it's fair to say that the feedback has been really strong very recently. And we've really made very, very good strides. I'll come in to talk about a little more detail about some of the changes, but I do want to stress that they're very much about the approach we take to competition and consumer enforcement, and not about the fundamentals of the outcomes we reach. And this is very much at the heart of our 3-year strategy that we published in November last year, so I'd encourage you all to have a look at that. And we more recently set out what we're going to be doing over the next 12 months or so in our annual plan, which was published very recently last month. And it's fair to say that all of our approach to enforcement and to our advocacy work, all of our action is driven by achieving impact as fast as we reasonably practically can through robust outcomes to consumers. On enforcement, we're being more deliberate about selecting investigations where we think we can deliver the greatest consumer benefit. And under the 4 Ps, we're moving a lot faster and being more targeted in how we go about gathering information and being willing to stand down lines of inquiry quickly when the evidence doesn't support taking them forward. So the annual plan emphasizes 3 main areas that we'll be focusing on: prioritizing consumer enforcement in areas of essential spend, tackling anti-competitive conduct, including in key growth sectors, and pursuing advocacy work with the government, advising them on removing anti-competitive regulations in key UK industrial sector strategy sectors. So on consumer enforcement, to say a little bit more about that, many of you will be aware that a year ago we got a new set of powers which give us the ability to directly enforce against breaches of consumer law. And that's without needing to go to court, whereas previously we'd have had to have taken that step. And under our new powers, our approach has basically been twofold. We spent the first few months working with businesses, issuing guidance on how the powers will be enforced, both the process, but also in terms of what some new substantive rules involve for businesses, recognizing that well-meaning businesses will want to be doing the right thing. But then, towards the end of last year, moving towards hard-edged enforcement. And we've so far targeted 3 areas. We've been very thematic in our approach. We've targeted drip pricing, we've targeted online choice architecture, and fake reviews. And this is an area where data and data analytical tools have really been a critical factor in helping inform our enforcement priorities. Over time, we've built a data, technology, and insights team of over 100 full-time staff comprising behavioral scientists, data engineers, data scientists, and the like. And they engage in a wide variety of our projects and cases across the CMA. And we're really starting to see that bear fruit now in terms of how that impacts the priorities we have and the cases that we take forward. So I mentioned consumer enforcement at the end of last year. And we, with the support of our data science team, conducted a major cross-economy review of more than 400 businesses to assess what we thought was their compliance or lack of compliance with rules on price transparency. And that helped us identify potential compliance concerns across around 14 different sectors, including things like drip pricing and the use of countdown timers, both of which are banned under our consumer protection regime. And it culminated in what we're calling the Big Bang of consumer protection in the UK in November last year, where we sent warning and advisory letters to over 100 businesses, and we opened in ongoing investigations into 8 different businesses. We've already settled one of those cases, and it took a few months to get to conclusion, and that relates to 2 driving schools with AA and BSM who have been fined just over £4 million in order to refund more than 80,000 customers who weren't shown the total price up front when they were booking their lessons online. We've had a second Big Bang very recently. We've launched another 5 cases into the theme of fake reviews after having sent 54 advisory letters across firms that we suspect are engaging in unlawful conduct. And so as you can see, consumer protection is something that we're investing a lot in, and it's moving incredibly rapidly. On competition enforcement, in addition to tackling anti-competitive conduct in key growth sectors, we're also using data an awful lot to help us with our prioritisation choices. And the annual plan makes stresses very heavily that we're really homing in on public procurement and the prospect of bid rigging in the public procurement space. It's an area that costs taxpayers in the UK nearly £400 billion, and with a typical price increase involved in bid rigging of around 20%, you can do the maths that it's a significant amount of savings that could be there if we can root out all forms of bid rigging. And we've been working closely with the government there because through access to their data, we can use our own screening tool to use as a source of intelligence for where we think suspected bid rigging could take place. And we've launched at least one case off the back of that intelligence. And I know this is an area where we've worked really closely with other agencies, and we look very jealously at some of the other agencies we have worked with, such as in Spain and Portugal, who have brilliant access to data and have really developed very, very powerful screening tools, which have acted as a really good building block for our own approach in the UK. So turning to our ex-ante tools, we've got merger control and we've got digital markets. And merger control was one of the areas we probably made the vast majority of the changes under the 4 Ps. It's a space where we're meeting more regularly with business leaders to understand the mergers that they are bringing about and their reasons why they believe them to be overall beneficial. We're having earlier discussions with parties about remedies so that they can be suitably designed and they can be well targeted to the concerns that we might have. And we've introduced ambitious new key performance indicators to streamline and speed up our processes. And we've managed to pretty much halve the amount of time that companies now spend in pre-notification with us. And then in terms of our case mix, we're also using a long-standing approach in our guidance, which is that we can wait and see before calling in a transaction if it involves global markets and it's being reviewed by another agency overseas. And that is something that we're now applying a little more frequently, and that brings agility to our mergers portfolio. But it's hugely dependent on good cooperation with the parties, but also good cooperation internationally as well. And whilst it's an important part of our toolkit in the merger control space, I don't want to overstate its frequency. We applied it twice in the last year, but it's certainly something we're doing more frequently than we used to. And then we've been very active and agile in relation to our digital markets work, which came into force in January last year. And many of you will be aware that we designated Google in relation to its search activities and also Google and Apple in relation to their mobile activities during the course of last year. And we're now beginning to see companies implement changes across their ecosystems as we move towards introducing conduct requirements. And in all 3 designations, we've taken a hugely agile approach, and through the participative model that we have, which is particular to the UK, to bring about impactful changes in their approach as fast as possible, whilst also working carefully through what can ultimately be achieved through legally binding conduct requirements, which can then be enforced by third parties. So we're taking a very blended approach across voluntary action and then moving towards those more hard-edged enforcement mechanisms. It is also an area where we're very mindful of developments internationally and very much adjusting our approach to take those into account. So those are some of the areas we've been pretty flexible, I would say, and that flexibility is important because it also frees up our agility and ability in some of our other ex-ante tools. We've got our markets tool, and then we also engage in a lot of advocacy with government as well, really helping to shape their policies, particularly recognizing that the UK are focusing on 8 industrial strategy sectors and how they're shaping their policies in each of those. The CMA's really stepped up its work to help put competition policy at the forefront of government's thinking. But in the market space, that's an area we can also have significant influence in how policy is developed in the UK. Quite a lot of our markets work ends up with recommendations to government to bring about new legislation. And you can see that with our VETS market investigation, but also we've got ongoing market studies in relation to civil engineering and dentistry, and also in heating oil as well, each of which could end up with recommendations to government, so very much shaping that policy space. And across all of those tools, our priorities don't sit still. We of course don't operate in isolation from the global context. That context feeds directly into how we prioritize across our functions, and it's critical to be able to pivot from a number of different aspects of our portfolio, so we can address the issues of the day. And I think the most immediate illustration of that agility is our response to the Middle East crisis. And from the outset of that, we've been acting to make sure effective competition helps minimize price increases and that consumers' rights are protected. And we've made clear that we'll act without hesitation and use the full range of our powers when we think consumer law has been breached. I mentioned that we've launched a market study into the heating oil space, and that is intended to be a 3-month quick market study to look at whether price rises are being passed through and whether that's leading to profiteering or price gouging at the retail level. It's something that we'll publish our findings on in the next month. And another area we've looked at quite carefully as well to pivot our focus is on petrol and diesel prices. We have a fuel finder scheme in the UK, like a number of other countries have. And we're looking very carefully at the impact of the Middle East crisis on fuel prices, and recently published a report on that on Friday last week. So flexibility is very much at the heart of the CMA's approach, and it's absolutely critical that we retain the ability to pivot our resources as things evolve.
Thank you very much, Chris. The 4Ps framework and the emphasis on agility clearly resonate across contexts. We now turn to Korea, a major economy navigating rapid digital transformation. Byung-Gi chairperson of the Korea Fair Trade Commission, is here with us.
Thank you, Irene.
We all know that with digital transformation accelerating and economic uncertainty rising, the strategic response capabilities of competition authorities matter more than ever. Has Korea chosen to strengthen economic sanctions while easing criminal penalties? Is this true?
Yes, that is true. Yeah. So there have been many concerns that our economic sanctions, specifically surcharges, were not enough to take back the unjust profits, and this led to a lack of deterrence and was significantly the level of sanction was significantly lower compared to the standards of other advanced countries. And so we aim to establish a more effective enforcement system by strictly imposing economic cost of violation of the law. So let me continue with our agenda for this year.
Yes.
Shall we?
We'll hear it. Great attention.
Okay. So good afternoon, everyone. And my name is Byung-Gi Ju. I'm the chairperson of the Fair Trade Commission, the Republic of Korea. Let me call our commission KFTC from now on. I'm delighted to have this opportunity to discuss the challenges currently facing the Korean economy and key strategies of the KFTC for enhancing organizational effectiveness. I'm sure that the same challenge is ahead of most other countries as well as the global economy. Today, countries around the world are entering a new technological environment. At the same time, we are witnessing intensifying monopolies and economic concentration and deepening concentration of wealth. In order to prevent the harmful effects of monopolies and extractive practices, and to sustain innovation and investment in R&D, the role of competition authorities in driving competitive pressure has never been more important. Korean economy has experienced so much changes for a very short period of time, as you all know, in terms of its size and development stage. However, institutional reforms take time and patience. We still need to overcome several outdated problems that are critical obstacles against our sustained economic growth and development. Let me first explain our first obstacle. We have large business groups. Their total assets, large business groups with total assets exceeding 5 trillion Korean won, which is about 3.6 billion US dollars, account for about 80% of our GDP. And internal transactions within these groups amounts to almost 1/3 of our GDP. Such concentration weakens market dynamism and blocks growth opportunities for SMEs while strengthening monopolies in key market sectors. Corrupt behavior within business groups, such as tunneling and the unfair succession of management control by owner families through internal transactions, still undermine corporate value and global competitiveness. KFTC is well known for its continued effort of dealing with these problems, monitoring corruptive and unfair business practices and punishing them, at least over the last 30 years. Now, I firmly believe that without this effort of KFTC, the shape of Korean economy must have been quite different from now. Another side of the economic concentration toward big business groups is the unfair practices arising from imbalanced bargaining powers between large firms and small and medium-sized enterprises. This is another urgent challenge facing Korean economy and KFTC. We realize that the current regulatory framework and institutional tools are ineffective in leveling the playground. Unfair business practices in the digital economy are also another major challenge today. There is still no law governing the digital economy in Korea, and accordingly, KFTC is pursuing a comprehensive overhaul of relevant laws and enforcement system to build a stronger and more effective framework. First, we will strengthen pecuniary sanctions so that the cost to the offender can far outweigh any unlawful gains. We will raise the upper limit of penalty surcharges to levels comparable to those in advanced economies, and also the minimum rates. For example, the current upper limit of penalty surcharge for abuse of market dominance is very low at 6%, compared with 30% in EU. We'll also introduce significant penalty surcharge for obstruction of investigations, thereby strengthening our investigative powers. It will be based on total turnover. Second, we will streamline excessive criminal provisions and expand the whistleblower reward program. Criminal penalties will remain only for serious violations such as cartels, technology appropriation, tunneling, among others. However, those for general unfair practices that stifle business activities will be abolished. You don't want to make your business leaders guilty of many unnecessary criminal provisions, of course. Third, we are increasing manpower and restructuring the organization in order to enhance our capacity and to process cases more quickly. This year, we will increase our staff by 167, which is about 1/4 of the current staff size, including one standing commissioner. This expansion will strengthen our capacity in investigation, economic analysis, and adjudication. Next, to promote fair trade and consumer protection in rapidly changing digital economy, first, we need legislation to protect platform users and to prevent exploitative practices by platforms. Second, we will hold platforms more accountable for payment settlement and consumer protection. We'll support legislation aimed at protecting settlement funds and enhancing transaction stability for small businesses. We are moving away from the old practice of imposing small, ineffective administrative fines. Instead, as a matter of principle, we'll impose financial sanctions proportional to the harm caused, thereby removing any incentives for platforms to deceive their users. Finally, we'll strengthen private enforcement mechanisms and expand the monitoring network of competition law. We'll also enhance the market's self-regulatory mechanisms against exploitative practices by bolstering the collective bargaining power of the small and medium-sized enterprises and the self-employed. We'll expand, first, private remedies to facilitate damage recovery. For malicious acts such as technology theft, we plan to introduce a discovery system. This will ease the heavy burden of proof placed on victims. We'll also consider introducing class action system or consumer collective action. Lastly, we are reviewing legal reforms to allow small and medium-sized enterprises and micro businesses and dependent contractors to form associations and protect themselves from exploitative practices through collective bargaining. We are preparing measures to exempt collective bargaining from cartel regulations so that weaker parties can negotiate as a group with stronger counterparts. In the era of energy transition and digital transformation, and under growing global uncertainty, strategic institutional design for effective enforcement is more important than ever. I hope what I shared today with you regarding Korea's challenges and KFTC strategies is useful and gives some insights. I would like to listen to your valuable comments and suggestions. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much. Very interesting the ways you intend to use to face today's and tomorrow's challenges. You're giving us ideas too. Now we turn of Hungary. Gabor Gal is a member of the Competition Council of the Hungarian Competition Authority. Gabor, because time is running out, would you tell us, please, the global trade crisis of the past 5 years has been unpredictable. How can compliance with predetermined long-term priorities be ensured while addressing acute economic downturns? And do you think publishing enforcement priorities is a common practice among competition authorities worldwide? Does it genuinely improve accountability, in your opinion, or does it risk undermining effectiveness and flexibility? And how is this trade-off perceived by stakeholders?
Thank you so much, Mrs. President Sharp, and for being able to hear and express our opinion on these matters. And I would like to say first that I'm replacing our President, Mr. Hugo, who couldn't be here today, but he sends his best wishes and greetings to you. So about the global trade crisis and the compliance with the predetermined priorities, I think indeed the global trade crisis have been unpredictable in the last couple of years, which highlight the need for a dynamic and adaptable approach in the face of these challenges. And we think that ensuring compliance with the long-term objectives and the principles needs a careful balance of these principles, but also agility and tools that are designed to react to unforeseen disruptions in market circumstances. With now crises now emerge basically every day or every month, from health pandemics to energy crisis to geopolitical tensions, so lots of them with increasing intensity and frequency. I think, and we think that the authority, that the rigid or more traditional methods of ways of operation may not always be sufficient, but that we need maybe a more nuanced and sophisticated approach to tackle all these challenges. And so we have embraced this new reality, and we're trying to adopt our framework to respond to the volatility of the global markets. And we recognize that in the face of those challenges, we need to remain flexible. And let me mention some of the new tools which we have developed in order to try to respond to these challenges. For example, we have recently in 2021 introduced a so-called accelerated sector inquiry, which aims to intervene when there are rapid disruptions in the market and there is an urgent necessity. For example, in the COVID crisis, we have identified that the prices of antigen tests were much higher in Hungary than in other countries, and therefore we've launched this accelerated sector inquiry into this product, and we have seen that there are the supply chain of this product was much longer because it could only be sold at pharmacies, and therefore we've recommended the legislator to make changes to the legislation that would allow gas stations and petrol stations and retail outlets to sell this product, and as a result, the price plummeted by about 50%. Another tool which we have, this is a tool which allows us to reach rapid conclusions with the help of maybe other authorities and also the legislator without having necessarily need to run lengthy antitrust proceedings. The second tool which we have introduced is that was at the time of soaring inflation prices. In 2023, it was a so-called price monitoring tool, which is a publicly available website where consumers can see and compare the prices of food products in 78 categories, and this is fed daily by retailers. And as a result, we can see increased transparency and increased price competition on the market. Subsequent assessment estimated about 10-12% decrease in the margins of the retailers for some products. So just to sum up, I think this question, I think we need to, at the same time, our approach is deeply rooted in the competition principles, so the consumer welfare, in the public interest in maintaining a fair and competitive markets. But we have adjusted our approach with these new tools, and we think that it is a balance of antitrust principles and the use of new tools, which can give relevant and effective answers in these markets in the face of those challenges. So I don't know if you have time to address your second questions on priority setting, or...
Unfortunately, we have much time, and it's very interesting, your approach. To close our panel interventions, we turn to a very different institutional reality, a smaller authority, operating with more limited resources. Joan Per, the president of the Competition Authority of French Polynesia, is here. Joan, based on your experience, do you think that prioritization actually plays out in practice for a small authority?
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm very grateful to the ICN and to the PCC, not only to be given the opportunity to speak on behalf of a small economy, but also because small economies in our antitrust competition law community is very often are too often overlooked. And I would like to acknowledge that this year, small economies are given visibility on the agenda, and we also received full support from the ICN Secretariat and also the PCC to organize the first Small Economies Forum as a pre-ICN event that occurred, that took place yesterday. And I know we are running out of time, but I'd like to take that time still to acknowledge, my esteemed colleagues from small economies. To name some of them, I'm sorry for those who I will forget, but we have here with us today New Caledonia, Fiji, Papua New Guinea, Aruba, Trinidad and Tobago, Dominican Republic, and that is just to name a few. That being said, I'm afraid I will take my answer to your question from a very different angle from what we've already heard today. And I'd like to give you a bit of context as what does that entail to be a small economy and a small competition authority. So we do have the similar powers as regular major competition authorities. Namely, so we have to go after anti-competitive practices. We also have the merger control. We also are consulted, so we give guidance to our government about bills and reforms and to lawmakers. But we also have a specific power that is the control over retail spaces that are so all the creation or extension of retail premises over 300 square meters need to get prior authorization before us. And I wanted to mention that because we are way not concerned by big tech fancy cases, but what we do face as challenges are very high level of concentrations, very high level of vertical integrations, so with the oligopolies and all the problems that goes with them, and also being a very small and remote economy, there are close ties between the politics and the big firms, and those big companies, we have a handful of companies that do control our entire economy. Our cost of living is through the roof. So I think it's roughly 40%, prices are 40% on average higher than on mainland France. And because of these close ties also between the politics and the business, our mere, I would say, existence is very often at stake. And I would just wanted to share with you today some examples. So ever since the creation of our competition authority 10 years ago, our powers have been decreased. Now it's the government who also handles, our HR. So we can recruit, but we have to wait for their validation about, the salaries and also the number of people that we can employ. And 2 years ago, we decided against, for the first time, we decided against the opening of a huge supermarket on an island. A few months later, when we were in a situation where we needed to hire 2 more case handlers, the government came back to us and said, well, you no longer have these positions open. So that means that left us, it leaves us now with only 5 case handlers to handle all these powers. And the Minister of Economy came to me and said, because I tried to make them understand that because of the cost of living and also the way the government deals with that, it puts a lot of expectations on us to try to resolve those issues. And one of the criticisms that we receive very often is that we don't issue enough anti-competitive cases. But the thing is that the other powers, so merger control, retail control, and even the opinions that we have to deliver on the draft laws, they are on a timing that is very constrained. So what it means for us is that if we have to deal with those, that means that the case handlers that are working on antitrust cases, they have to stop working on those cases to deal with the notifications that we receive. And also, I spent a lot of my time to try to advocate before the Minister of Economy to say, well, we need those positions back, and actually we need more because we are understaffed. And then he came back to me and said, Joanne, I hear you. I hear you lack resources. So I have an idea, and the idea was to cut off the power of retail control from us. So I came back to him and said, well, you cannot do that, even like politically, that would be a mistake. So we are not longer down that road, but I just wanted to give you that example to mention that for us, when it comes to prioritize, we don't have yet the luxury to prioritize on the cases, to try to get done the cases that would be more impactful for the consumers. But we do have, I think we have more than 10 antitrust cases, mainly dominant position cases, that we need to deal with. And so for me, prioritizing is to choose between the powers that we can actually exercise if we want to get the antitrust cases out. And we decided with the board this year that one of the solutions that we are going to implement is that for the rest of the year, we will no longer answer the demands from the government to advise them, on the laws, because otherwise there is no way we can issue the abuse of dominant cases that we do have, in particular in sectors that are very important for us, like the telecommunications and all. So that's basically what I wanted to share. I know we are running out of time, but I just wanted maybe to say a word also on capacity building, because how do we do in such a situation to try to still, leverage on expertise, training? So we have several elements or tools that we are using. The first one is AI. I think AI for small economies, it's really great because that enables us to work faster on drafting and also on research. So I would compare that to a great trainee, and that is capacity building for our team. The other element the other tool that is very important to us, and we've been hearing a lot about that also, I know already, but that's cooperation. So we hold very close ties with the French Competition Authority, and we do have now, and I'm very lucky that we managed to build, and Australia and New Zealand managed to build the network of the Pacific Competition Authorities, and that has been very helpful to advocate to my government, my case handlers also, my lawmakers, to tell them that we are not something that was imposed, by France, because there is this, post-colonial, sensitivity as well. And once being able to say, well, we are included, in a region where almost all the islands do have competition laws and competition authorities, that was very helpful. And the other element that I wanted to mention is, and this is something that Martin Snoop mentioned yesterday at the Small Economies Forum. He said, well, another way to get more to leverage on capacity building is to find a bigger friend. And we did find bigger friends. So we have our NGAs that come from the private practice that do help us with training, with advocacy, with research work as well. And we do also have strong support from academics. And we are very lucky to have to receive great support from Professor Kovacic. We name him at our place. We name him Build the Best. So this is also something that has proven very, very helpful. Thank you.
Do you think that the ICN can do more to support smaller or younger agencies? What's your opinion?
Yes, thank you for that question. Yeah, there is one element. I think that would be very helpful to us if we could explore a way to include small economies. When you are dealing with global deals, global mergers, with remedies, if we could find somehow a way to include the small economies that are also part, of the deal, that are also impacted by it, and find solutions for common remedies, that would be very helpful. Because one of the problem and the challenge that we do face as small islands, and this is something that has been mentioned also yesterday by Willard from the COMESA, is that we always face the risk to the intimidation from bigger companies. And we had to deal with a case like that, also from a shipping company. We have being an island and a remote island, we are heavily relying on imports. And I think roughly 80% of the goods that we consume come from imports. And there is, out of it, I think roughly 60%, maybe more than 60%, that come from the European Commission, European Union and the US. And there is only one shipping line to bring those goods to French Polynesia. And there is only one shipping company on that one shipping line, monopoly. And that shipping company in 2024 decided to buy the leader on the downstream market. In Polynesia, on this downstream market, we have 5 players. And this merger would have meant that there would no longer have been competition on the downstream market. So we wanted to go for structural remedies. And the negotiation was kind of tough because the first thing they said, well, the council said to us that if we are being too tough, then we were facing the risk that the company would just exit the market. And then what they also told us is that they were also dealing with the European Commission, and that the European Commission did accept behavioral remedies. So what we had to do, we asked for a waiver from the parties to be able to exchange information with the Commission. And then we found out that not only did the Commission ask for structural remedies, sorry, I forgot to mention that was because they had jurisdiction over other French territories, so on similar, structural economies as ours. And the Commission did go for structural remedies, and they obtained it from the shipping company, the merging parties, very quickly. So that allowed us, to come back to them and to say, well, we're not very happy because that's not exactly what we understood from the negotiation. So we ended up being able to ask for structural remedies, and that was thanks to the cooperation with the Commission. But so I think that if upstream, the Commission could have identified that we were also on the remit and include us into the discussions, that would have eased up things a lot. Thank you.
Thank you very much. One of the panelists wants maybe to say something. There's just a few minutes. Do you want to add anything? Hungary, you want to say something?
Yeah, maybe only if we have some more minutes, then the
just
priority
2-3
setting.
minutes.
Just okay. No, just the priority setting because that was also I think your question, which I couldn't cover completely. So it's so on the priority setting is that we have a strategy. We have a 3-year strategy where we cover basically the key areas where targeted intervention is needed. It's cartels, the digital sector, and RPM practices. This is published every 3 years. but then we also, but we don't deliberately, we don't set priorities. So apart from this strategy, because we think that it was discussed at the time when the ICN Plus was introduced in Europe, we deliberately discussed whether to set priorities when we came to the conclusion that that this could, market players could use this for gaming, and then they could divert the activities to areas which are not priorities, and also they could conceal evidence, and then that also that this would limit our responsiveness to the new challenges that we are facing.
Thank you, our 5 panelists for their frankness and their generosity in sharing their experiences and giving us ideas also. Thank you very much, all of you, for engagement and your attending. Thank you, and thank you to the Philippine Competition Commission for the opportunity they gave us to be here, and their very warm welcome. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Sharp. May I invite everyone to please stand for a photo opportunity. We have on stage Ms. Sharp, our moderator. Please step forward. Let's have a line in the front of the stage, please. And of course, our speakers, Mr. Kamei, Mr. Byung-Gi Chu. And by the way, that is not Mr. Rigu. That is Mr. Gabor Gal from Hungary. We have also Mr. Previtt and Ms. Pyre participating in this plenary, where it started with a question, how do we move forward as agencies and keep ourselves agile? Lots of points covered in this plenary, and we thank again Ms. Sharp for leading us through it. Last wave in the cameras, and actually, can I ask everyone, give me a wave as well, because yeah, just to get that blood pumping. We need you alive for the final stretch. ICN, after all, is celebrating 25 years this year, and that is why for this final plenary session, the 5th of the day, it is entitled ICN at 25. Past lessons, present achievements, future horizons. And it will bring us to this special conversation that looks back at the evolution of the ICN over the past 25 years, and not just celebrating milestone, but actually celebrating the collective progress of our global competition community. And who do we have at the helm? Back to our ICN chair, Andrea. Where are you? How are you doing? Everybody, a round of applause for our National Antitrust Commission from Mexico and chairman of the ICN, who's still awake since her arrival at 5 a.m. today. Andrea, please take your seat. Andrea Marvan. And she will be joined by 3 speakers. Mr. Dave Anderson of the European Commission, Directorate General. Mr. Dave, good afternoon. And ICN special guest, Mr. Paul O'Brien. Hi, Paul. Welcome to Manila. As well as the Japan Fair Trade Commission's Ms. Reiko Aoki. Reiko Aoki. All smiles for the final panel. Hi, Ms. Reiko. Come on up and join us. And after this, we invite you all to enjoy Manila. Actually, there's lots to do in this area to stretch. But if for now, may we all lend our ears to the final panel of the day, celebrating 25 years of the ICN. Andrea, Miss, please take it away.
Thank you. Can you all hear me? Yes. So, thank you all. We promise to keep this live and entertaining and short and funny maybe, so that we don't lose the audience. So please keep with us for this final panel of the day, which is very special because today we celebrate, as I mentioned in my opening speech, a very meaningful moment as we come together to celebrate the 25 years of the ICN. I think it's a celebration of a global effort that has brought us all into the same room across regions, legal systems, and perspective with a shared purpose. So when the ICN was created, back a quarter of a century ago, it was driven by a vision, which I think we all share, which is to bring competition authorities together, strengthen our cooperation, and promote convergence towards the sound, effective practices. And now, that small idea that started 25 years ago is created a network, and as I mentioned earlier, I think a true community where we just see each other and smile at each other and are very happy to see each other across the room. And it has also changed, apart from being a community, it has changed the way we think and we see competition policy. And for example, in Mexico, the ICN and many of the documents and best recommended practices and work products that the ICN has brought out have been key in shaping also competition laws. So I think the ICN is not only a network to bring dialogue and better practices, but it has also helped us back home to push for when we needed legal reforms or to keep best practices afloat in our agencies. So as we mark this anniversary, I want to reaffirm our shared commitment to open markets, to clear and predictable rules, to strong and resilient institutions, and that above all, competition culture benefits our economies and our societies. So we will first start by watching a very short video, and then I will introduce our panelists and would like to hear from their views and their experiences of how the ICN was shaped, created, and now evolving. So please, we can start with the video.
In an increasingly interconnected and constantly changing global market, international cooperation is no longer optional, it is essential. The ICN was created as a unique platform that is voluntarily, practical, and member-driven. Its value has always been clear: voluntary, trust-based international cooperation that promotes knowledge, exchange, and convergence without compromising sovereignty. Very early on, the ICN demonstrated that this model works. Its early years were defined by speed, impact, and the development of concrete tools. Over time, the ICN expanded its membership, its reach, and its global impact. What makes the ICN unique is not only the topics that it discusses, but also the work products developed by its working groups and members, as well as its voluntary model. Today, competition agencies face shared challenges, such as digital transformation, complex markets, and effective enforcement, while also addressing the growing convergence between competition policy and other areas, such as consumer protection, data governance, industrial policy, and other social concerns. The ICN encourages a pick-up-the-phone relationship amongst authorities, providing a space for open, candid, and respectful conversations. As a diverse network, the ICN ensures that all agencies have a meaningful voice, including experienced, young, and smaller authorities. The ICN must continue evolving by strengthening our cooperation while striking the right balance between preserving the principles that has sustained its success and adapting to the new reality. After 25 years, the mission remains clear. The network continues to uphold its core principles while evolving to meet a policy environment in which the future of competition policy is shaped together and increasingly interacts with broader objectives.
Thank you. And so now I am delighted to welcome our esteemed panelists. All of them, I think, are ICN luminaries who have been closely involved with the ICN since its early years. There's certainly no need for a formal introduction, so I'll do a very brief introduction of each of them. First of all, I would like to welcome Reiko Aoki, who I think we can all agree that we could not imagine the ICN without Reiko, and I just want to give a huge recognition to Reiko, who recently retired but is still a special advisor to the JFTC. Please, Reiko, welcome. And again, commend you on everything that you have done for the ICN. I think you are one of the women that, when you think of ICN, you think of Reiko, so thank you. Next, we welcome Dave Anderson, who is a partner at Bryan Cave Leighton Paisner, with more than 30 years of experience in international competition and regulatory law. He has served as an NGA to the ICN since its founding in 2001 and co-edited the ICN 20 book presented in Berlin in 2022. Dave, welcome. And last, but definitely not least, Mr. Paul O'Brien, or Mr. ICN as we all know him, and the pin maker, so if anyone wants the pin, you have to speak to him, who currently works on the private sector, but during his time at both US competition agencies has been one of the major contributors to the ICN. Thank you, Paul. And finally, I would like to introduce our final participant in this session, which is our audience. Throughout today's panel, we will show some questions for you to reply through an interactive tool that you can scan the QR code or visit mentimeter.com and enter the code displayed now on screens. Can we please display the code to participate and be part of this conversation? Let's see if we can have the code. We'll wait for a second. Oh, there it is. Please scan the code. And again, in order to keep you awake during this session, and at the end, the ICN is formed by you, and all of you are the most important part and what keeps the ICN alive and vibrant. So please participate in the session. And without further ado, we can begin. So first, I feel like we are talking about the ghost of Christmas, the past, the present, and the future. I think that's how we're going to handle the session. And so first, let's start with the past, the foundations and the legacy. And to begin this conversation, we will focus on the foundation and the legacy of the ICN. As Carl Sagan once said, you have to know the past to understand the present. So we will talk about the early days of the ICN to reflect on its current stage. And before I open the door to a panelist, I have our first question to the audience, which is, if you had to describe the ICN's legacy in one word, what would it be? And please write whatever word comes to mind. And as our panelists talk, we will see those words, and you're all welcome to comment on those words. So while the audience gives us the reply, the first question is to Dave. So Dave, as I mentioned, you have been involved in the ICN since its beginning, and it wasn't designed, and it's still not designed, as a traditional organization. I think it's something unique. So can you share with us, how did this creation transform international cooperation amongst competition authorities, and what initially seemed like an experiment become one of the most important competition institutions worldwide? Please, Dave.
Turn this on? How's that sound, guys? Hear me okay? I can't see any of you, so thank you very much. Thanks, and thanks, Andrea, and to everyone for this real honor to be talking here, especially with such esteemed friends. And yeah, I think your question is great. And you know, when we first think of the how, I look at that first. Really, the ICN changed everything in cooperation, I would say. But to understand that, yeah, I will drag you guys back a little bit, and my friends here will remember the time. Many of you also were there. This was late 90s. We had Bill Clinton as president of the US. We had the Euro about to come. We were worried about Y2K. We had Karel van Miert and Maramonti were my first commissioners in Brussels. This is the time we're thinking of. And we had a perfect storm brewing in the world, I would say, that created an environment for needing a global competition organization, because we didn't have one. There were many countries coming to market economies, many new agencies. We had a merger boom. Globalization was really taking place. The World Bank was encouraging everybody to get a competition agency to protect their new fledgling market economies. But we really had no coordination. There was some dialogue, some cooperation, but it was pretty infants and pretty much between only a couple of jurisdictions. We also were facing major divergence risks, I would say, substantively. Late 90s, we had a big case, Boeing McDonnell Douglas, which started to think, hey, guys, we have big global cases now. We're worried about divergences. And major inefficiencies, because everybody had their own rules. And they were all very different. There was no coordination. So we had uncontrolled kind of maze of filings, high costs, and for agencies, also getting too many filings as well. So something was needed. And so what I really think is we had a group of folks who were very happy to follow in their footsteps, what I call rebels with a cause. The combination built up to many ideas being thought of. We thought of a WTO-linked organization. OECD was thinking of, they're thinking of a global competition agency. There were all kinds of things. It was big think time. But the agencies decided, a group of them said, hey, we need to do this ourselves. We need to create something different, exactly as you said, Andrea. Go their own way, do something different, have a purpose, bring in NGAs as well, so folks like me got to be involved. And we were very supportive. So innovation is in the DNA of the ICN from the very beginning. We saw it. And as my mom used to say, there is magic in boldness. I really believe we had a bold vision at the beginning. It was unique, as you said, many risks involved, but I think we felt it was right for this community if we could do it ourselves. And it was very different. So we had a virtual organization idea, voluntary membership, no physical buildings, no permanent staff, no budget, informal and flexible, producing non-binding outputs, only one focus, relying on expert volunteers. What could go wrong? Right? But it worked, guys, and it worked. We were bold and we were brave at the beginning. Don't forget, we were talking before about challenges going on today. The ICN was founded in October 2001, 1 month after 9/11, and only a few months after the big divergence in GE Honeywell between the US and the EU. This was a very challenging time to say, hey, let's start an organization where we're all going to talk and be together. But it was done, and the take-up was very fast for agencies and for NGAs coming on board. We felt like our contribution was valued and asked for, and agencies really felt that they needed to finally be together. So for sure, the how was very brave, and I mention all of this because I really think that we have a remarkable consistency now over 25 years. What I saw at the beginning is still here in this room today. Everything that I saw then, we still have. The inclusivity, all agencies are welcome now. No matter your size, no matter where you are, no matter your views, you can be a part. NGAs are also involved and still continue to be. And we had a great session with Mike today, continuing on NGA liaison, which is fantastic to see. These experimental days were all about trying to figure out what we thought and trying to see, is there consensus? And that was really the second big thing. We were learning from each other. What was good? What worked? What did we think could be a better way of building this kind of organization in all the areas? We started with mergers. That was definitely the kickoff, and my friends will talk about that too. But the idea was that, how do we do this together? We start to come up with ideas, and regardless of position. It was the persuasion over coercion. Dave Lewis from South Africa said that, and I was always moved by that. That's what this organization did. But then, yeah, come up with the ideas, but then we have to implement and have impact. And we've done that. We've done that over and over again. The work products that we do, talking to people, and just the hard work every day, every time we do it. You guys do it, certainly the chair's office, all the working group chairs, the steering group, all the calls, all the work products, everything that we put together. I'm always amazed at the dedication of this organization, and really backed by the Secretariat, who we couldn't do without, in addition to chair's office and all of the co-chairs as well. But then it's you guys. I think this is really a special sauce. This community is special. You guys do this because you believe it's the right thing to do to help your economies at home, the global economy, and your friends. And I think that's a beautiful thing, this shared purpose. So that esprit de corps was there in 2001 and in the years leading up to it, in fact, and still today. So I would say that we are still being bold together. So to take us back and to take us forward, hopefully that kicks us off.
Thank you. Thank you, Dave. And before I move to Reiko, maybe we can show some, we're seeing some of the words up there. I could see Paul looking at the words and having fun. Oh, there it is. So in the center right there, we have cooperation, engagement, and community. I love it that there's also a side of progress, progressive, and friendship, and friends come there, family, network. I think those are beautiful words. Anyone from the panelists want to jump and comment on that? And while you guys think of that, Reiko, I will move to you. And Reiko, maybe you can share with us how has the network's voluntarily consensus-based approach helped drive convergence? Reiko, as some of you probably know, the ICN has liaison officers with OECD and with UNCTAD, and Reiko has served as the OECD liaison for a while and has done an extraordinary work. So also, you can maybe comment on how the OECD and the ICN's work is complementary amongst each other. So please, Reiko.
Thank you. Is the mic working? Oh, okay. Oh, all right. Thank you, President Mavan. And first of all, I'd like to say what a great honor it is to share the panel with Dave and Paul, as well as the president. I'm just a baby compared to these two giants in the ICN. I've only been with have been coming to ICN for the past 10 years. But thanks to the inclusiveness of the ICN community, I feel like I have been around actually for 25 years. Thank you for the opportunity. And today I'm here to, as Andrea mentioned, as the coordinator between ICN and OECD, I think, which will shed a light on what's special about ICN comparing it to the OECD, another global organization network. As it was has been mentioned time and again, ICN has a very diverse membership, greater than the OECD, and also the extent of NGA participation is also contributing to the diversity of the ICN. And I will not repeat the advantage of voluntary consensus-based approach that Dave has just mentioned, and so many people throughout the day have mentioned, and its inclusiveness. And how experiences can be shared, leading to more accumulation of knowledge, experience leading to some convergence and understanding among the members. And most recent example of this function would be how ICN has looked into the digital economy and the sustainable economy in response to what the members wanted to do and wanted to know. And some countries are leaders in respective field, while others are there to learn and are actually able to learn. And the current leader, and ICN is built on various working groups where different authorities take turns taking responsibilities. That is very different from the OECD that has a permanent secretariat and probably has strength in detailed analysis and forward-looking exploration. In other words, ICN's strength, I think, is listening to its members, doing immediately, acting on what matters the most to its members at the time. The current leadership, President Mavan and the Italian Authorities Secretariat have taken over very smoothly from the leadership of Andreas Munch and the Canadian Authority. Long work as the Secretary of the ICN. And I think the transition has gone very smoothly. And as coordinator, I am very happy to report that President Mavan and OECD Competition Committee Chair Benoit Correa have been actively discussing how to collaborate even better in the next 25 years. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Reiko. And before I go over to the Ghost of Christmas Present, or the present of the ICN, Paul, I saw that you wanted to jump in and comment on the words that were shown on screen. So please, Paul.
Well, thank you. I would say that I would have nothing more to say. You said it all. I mean, look at those beautiful words, as you said. I mean, we're talking about progress and brilliance and huge and inspiring and amazing. Someone said, hola, hola. Someone also said pin, and I think they're trying to make me cry up here, but it's for everyone. I mean, wonderful words.
Great. So now we move to the present achievements and challenges. I have a second question before returning the microphone back to Paul, which is, in one word, what do you consider is the ICN's biggest challenge? And why the while we share the thoughts on screen, let's now hear from Mr. ICN himself. Paul, you have played a key role in initiatives like the Third Decade Project, and you also saw the network navigate through very extraordinary and complicated moments like a global pandemic. So based on these experiences, what do you see as the network's core strength that have allowed it not only to navigate crises, but to remain relevant, resilient, and forward-looking over its 25-year journey? Please, Paul.
Thank you, Andrea, and thank you, Dave. Thank you, Reiko. The ICN is better because of each of you. I admire the enthusiasm and insights you all bring, and I'm grateful to be up here looking at so many friendly faces. Thank you to the PCC, Chair Mike and Ken, the whole team. This fantastic event full of ICN spirit is a fitting celebration of the ICN mission. I'm Paul. You may remember me from past ICN work or ICN pins. And in celebration of this gathering, I will begin each intervention with a did you know fast fact about the ICN. Did you know the ICN was almost the GCN? Indeed, the earliest references were to a Global Competition Initiative, or the GCI. It was then changed to the GCN, and finally settled on the ICN we all know and love by the time of the first conference in 2002 in Naples, Italy. Of course, we ended up creating a lot of enemies at the International Council of Nurses. All right, I want to highlight two strengths of the network. First, ICN's inclusivity and broad membership. We've already heard a lot about that. I'll just co-sign that briefly. As you know, the ICN includes just about every agency and just about every type of voice in the competition community. It's not intended as a network for incumbents, for exclusive dealing, nor as a conspiracy. ICN is open to all, and its low barriers to entry have enabled it to grow to over 140 members, the largest international body dedicated solely to competition. This open source design also extends beyond agencies to NGAs and the full competition community, with private sector lawyers, economists, academics, and other experts integrated into its work. This brings diverse perspectives and enhances the richness and credibility of the ICN's output. The second core strength I want to point out is ICN's practical approach and flexibility, the flexibility of its work products and work process. First, as we've heard already, ICN is a do-it-yourself network built by competition agencies for competition agencies. The nature of the network is embodied in a mentality of practicality. Work products tend to address real enforcement challenges rather than abstract policy debates, although I think we can be a little abstract from time to time. Working groups tackle practical issues with direct input from those doing the work. Two quick examples from my past experience. I worked on the ICN's first staff-focused manual, a merger one for merger staff. One of the contributors to our group decided to market test it back in his agency. He had two cases roughly at the same point in the process, and he gave the manual to one of his staffs. Months later, he was hooked on the ICN. He came back to us and said the results, process, timing, analysis, everything was better in the handbook-informed manner. To this day, I'm not sure I've heard a more compelling pitch for the ICN. My second quick example involves another staff manual, the Anti-Cartel Enforcement Manual. An agency was doing its first raid. They had no procedures or process for it. This was their first time, so they followed the ICN manual. So much so that when they showed up and the parties pushed back on the raid, they actually pulled out the ICN manual on site and cited it. Now, to be clear, they did have legal authority and they followed all their rules, but it was the ICN that gave them the confidence to implement their own powers. On flexibility, the ICN was a virtual network before that was a thing. We were ahead of our time in harnessing virtual advantages to establish real connections. I'm thinking maybe that was ICN's biggest miss, the idea that we did not build and license our expertise of virtual meetings way back in 2001. Although I guess they do say innovation is difficult to predict. The nature of work product flexibility gives the ICN the ability to address everything of relevance to the competition community and to do it in ways that are best suited for membership needs. If you look at the taxonomy of ICN work, it can be maddening. There are RPs, there are GPs, handbooks, manuals, workbooks, tips, reports, comparisons, libraries, and even a virtual university, and so on. but each has its own different purpose and an expression of member issues and needs at the time. All right, maybe that's the key to the ICN paradox, harnessing the benefits of international cooperation like shared learning while respecting the autonomy of our individual agencies to make their own choices. This makes participation attractive rather than burdensome. And before if you'll indulge me, one last quick tip. I think it was a brilliant decision not to make this a forum for specific case cooperation. Could you imagine the legal thicket that we'd all be in if we were the hub for 140 spokes of case cooperation? Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. And we can see some of the words. So right there in the center, we have AI as a challenge, which I think we all can agree. Small economies, convergence, etc. And I could not agree more with you, Paul, on the strengths that you have identified. I think the ICN is what it is today because of its ability to bring together diverse views and the usefulness of the products and the work products, like the example you just gave of the dawn rates. So our next question is for any of the panelists who wants to just jump in. And I would like to ask all of you, or some of you, to draw from your own experiences and share with us what would you say is a key milestone that best captures the ICN's evolution from a very small forum into a central global platform for competition, dialogue, and a community such as this one. Anyone else want to jump in and volunteer? Dave?
Did you guys agree? Okay, I'll be the old man. The first one that I would say is the milestone was, and again, harking back to what I was saying earlier, the first recommended practices that the ICN did, which proved the theory that this group can deliver and produce something. And remember, this doesn't happen by accident. We have to go and give huge credit to the ICPAC committee, led by Jim Rill and Merit Genow, and that inspired the idea of what Paul mentioned, the GCI, the first idea. Many people probably around remember that. I have the 2 thick, heavy books in my room still. I treasure them. We had the European Merger Control 10th Anniversary Conference at the Metropole Hotel in Brussels, which I was lucky enough to be at, and I think several people here were there too, where Commissioner Monte and Joel Klein basically agreed that we can do this. They stopped saying that we can't do it, and let's agree, and the ICN was then able to to go forward the next year. And a lot of that was based upon, again, we had all this stuff to do that we needed to do right away because it was super urgent in mergers. And so that was the kind of raw material that was created. And there's some folks here who deserve huge credit for getting that done, actually doing the work. Private sector really pitched in on that and felt really like the ICN could have us in and we could contribute because they really accepted and asked for ideas. And then the agencies took that and ran with it. And created what was the first one. I went back and looked at some of the emails from those early years, and they're just really fun to see. The grit, the determination, the hard work, the drafting. There are several people in this room here, Maria and Paul, when you're at DOJ, you're on those emails. Dan Schobloom, who brought me in as well, and Stephen Ryan at Comp. Andreas Munt himself is on these emails with Anna Racek and so many others. This helps show that the network could produce. We could seek convergence, we could seek consensus, write it down, agree on it, and then try to tell everybody that this is gonna, if you use this, then you've achieved the highest standard, the best product that we can do, and help convergence and harmonization, which is built into the mission and in the great work plan that great to see there was a copy outside as well. And this laid the groundwork for what we have today. The fact that we could move on to substantive standards, create other working groups, the cartel working group, the Unit of Conduct, which in 2001 was shooting for the stars. The idea that we could actually have a group and globally talking about that was amazing, and move on for further things. So to me, this led to the future.
Thank you. Thank you, Dave. If it's okay with my fellow panelists, we can move on to the future because we only have 10 minutes left for the panel. And so let's go on to vision and to innovation, and let's see not only where the ICN stands today, but to where it must go. And I think it's very clear, and we can all agree that the future will not wait and is not waiting. And we may not have a crystal ball to predict what comes next, but we do have 25 years of experience and a network that is uniquely equipped, I think, to face whatever challenges may come our way in the next 25 years. So the question, I think, is not what the future holds, but how the ICN would lead defining it. With that in mind, I do invite our panelists to share their vision of the next chapter ahead of us. And so first, what is one fundamental principle or value that the ICN must continue to carry forward? And reflecting on these future challenges and opportunities, what is one thing that the network should be bold enough to change, which I think is also not an easy question. Reiko, would you like to start it off with by answering these very complicated issues?
Actually, I was hoping I would be the last one, because what I would like to say is what you're thinking about one drastic change. Maybe you're looking for some kind of an innovation, or what Bill Kovachik called earlier in the day, policy entrepreneurship. And when you think about successful firms that he was comparing to, policy agency he was comparing to, is that a lot of successful firms actually build on their strength. They might do drastic changes, but it's complementary to what the strength, its strength is. And as we said time and time again, the strength of ICN is the voluntary nature, consensus-based approach. And I think we will always remember these values, strengthen these values, and whatever changes we make will be something that is strengthen these core values.
Thank you, Reiko. Paul, anything you want to add up there to that list?
Absolutely, thank you. Did you know that the ICN has met in person 100 times in 62 cities in 40 jurisdictions? Yes, you heard that number right. This is the 100th live meeting of the ICN. More reason to celebrate this week. In terms of a founding principle, the ICN was founded with an aspirational and optimistic mindset. It had to be. It was born out of failure, the failure of countries to agree on a WTO framework on competition. But what a successful failure that has turned out to be. The binding hard law path of negotiated compromises around minimal standards was not to be. Instead, competition agencies were able to take the reins of their own fate, so to speak, and self-determine the nature of their own relationships and joint work. That took great optimism, I think, to see that failure and to say, hey, we can do better ourselves in a non-coercive context. I used to feel this inspiration, this aspiration, this optimism most around the time of annual work planning each year. For a month every year, the ICN felt like a startup with the mentality to identify needs and use cases and try to tackle them with energy and optimism. Damn the resources or challenges that were always ahead. So that's my wish. I hope the network continues to see its own success through self-ownership and forging a common vision carried by optimism. In terms of a bold challenge or a bold change, let me encourage the ICN to continue to not do its best. Here, I channel the insights of Bill Kovachik, who has said the best practice in competition policy is the relentless pursuit of better practices. Turns out it can be hard work not doing your best. It requires discussion, consideration, periodic reviews, ex post evaluation, explanation, and comparison, as Martine said, reflection. But that hard work continues to sound like a great recipe for meaningful recommendations and the mission of a results-oriented do-it-yourself ICN. WTO thought it was best, but perhaps we knew better. I'd say double down on that hard work, ICN, talk more, discuss more, continue to use the range of flexible and creative tools, maybe create some new ones, to inspire better practices. ICN is not a network for nostalgia, except, of course, the occasional celebratory panel. It was set up to identify and test what works well and provide a set of shared stars, a common reference point for each membership to plot its own course. So that's my bold suggestion. Either that or use more AI.
When everything fails, just call Maria. Right? So, and now, given that Paul, you just mentioned all of the range of ICN tools that we have, I think looking ahead, how can we, can the network further enhance the practical impact and accessibility of its work to its members, particularly in this rapidly evolving enforcement environment? And Dave, maybe you want to jump in?
Yeah, sure. I'll just mention two quick things. I would really encourage the community here to continue to bring our work product to life. We have a huge library. You've got it outside. It's been updated. And I really want to make sure that we don't lose the hard work that all of you guys have done, the work in the workshops. Let's keep using these. Let's keep doing hypotheticals. I love what we're doing in the Agency Effectiveness Working Group, being led by a bunch of the great co-chairs, actually making hypos that we can then use for cooperation. It's fantastic. We did it in mergers, of course, with soy milk and with sports drinks. We did it in Mexico City. We did it in Tokyo. This was all great stuff, and I want to keep making sure that we do this because I really think that this can help, especially younger agencies. I saw up there small economies, younger agencies. We need to do this and probably also keep working on our training on demand work as well, which could be done. The second thing that I would say is a challenge that we need to keep looking for to enhance is to keep an eye on implementation for our impact. We are soft law, but we need to make sure we count our numbers to make sure that we are working this. And if we don't, and we don't see adherence, then we need to go back and ask why and say, have things changed? So that's another part. I think this is where the rubber hits the road for the ICN. We need to survey ourselves. Don't fear the survey. We need that information from all of you so we know where we stand and we know what we're doing, and keep focusing on promotion and implementation so we keep our eyes on the prize to achieve our implementation impact.
Thank you. If it's okay with our panelists, given that we have 5 more minutes, would you like to make it up to closing remarks and to wrap it a little bit up? And before ending our conversation, I want to turn to our audience for one final question, which is, in one word, what does the ICN mean to you? And while we get the answers, and I love it that the center of there is communication, cooperation, support, growth, and again, family, friends, and friendships keep coming up, and community, which I could not agree more. And while we get more answers and more words, can maybe some of our panelists reflect very briefly on what the ICN has meant to you personally, and looking toward the ICN at the next 5 or 30 years, what outcome or legacy will you make, or you would be most proud of our network's journey? Please, anyone is welcome to jump in from the panel. I can see Paul reflecting very hard. Reiko raising their hand. Yes, Reiko, please.
Okay, thank you. Well, friendship, as I said, when I came here 10 years ago, there were all these people who had been with the ICN a lot longer, and the inclusiveness. The first time I walked in, there were people who spoke the common language, who understood what the JFTC's issues were, and this was very heartwarming. And I think I blended right in, and I hope everybody else has had a similar experience when they show up at the ICN meetings. Summarizing what I'm hoping for the ICN in the near future, I think the ICN, I hope, will be the solution for the challenge that we have now, like, well, the small economies that was mentioned, their sustainability, their geopolitical challenges, and I think ICN is going to be the solution. Thank you.
Thank you, Reiko. Anyone else want to jump in? No?
I will. Thank you. And let me start with a confession. And Andrea asked us to do this in a sentence. I'm going to take more than a sentence. I'm sorry about that. By my count, no ICN panel has ever concluded on time. And my goodness, I'm not going to let that happen on my watch, breaking that streak. Did you know, and I'm sure Andrea knows this, there's someone here who has participated in every ICN conference. I say that not to recognize that Bill has better airline status than all of us. I say it because the best competition advocate, influencer, scholar, and champion on the planet prioritizes the ICN. And you know, if you ask me how I know the ICN is special, well, my short answer is because the likes of Bill Kovacic, Eleanor Fox, Fred Genie, John Fingleton, and Alan Fels, and so many other top antitrust thinkers devote their attention to the ICN. Now, getting to a little bit about, getting to my final thought, Andrea, and thank you, Edgar, for my slide here. Andrea was gracious enough to indulge me with one slide. This is my quick, non-complete list of people who are not here today, but whose contributions are built into the legacy of the ICN. I learned from them, I admired them, I appreciated them, and I'm grateful that I could recognize them in some way today. And yes, by the way, if you're in this room, you're on my list, so don't worry about that. But it's just my list. I really hope that you have your own, and that you're still building these connections through engagement in the ICN. Because for me, to answer, finally, your question, beyond the treasure trove of the substance that ICN has developed and produced in 25 years, work that has helped inspire agencies to improve the lives of billions of people around the world. Beyond all that, at the core of ICN's accomplishments is a very human thing. The ICN connects people. You know, increasingly research shows that the key to happiness and longevity is strong interpersonal relationships. So to that I say, long live the ICN.
Thank you, Paul. That was beautiful. Dave, the bar is not high for you. Please.
No, Paul, thanks, man. How do you follow that? Yeah, just one quick minute just to say to everybody, the ICN has been a constant, and pre-ICN have been constant in my career. I was a baby lawyer when we started talking about doing something like this, and the trajectory of this organization and the rise of competition law globally has followed my career. So one of the most fulfilling parts of my career has been with you guys and doing the good work that we do here every day. And special shout out to my agency, DG Comp folks who are here for giving me the chance to do it. But to all of you, such a great group, and we have fun. Yeah. Think of all the fun we've had in great places like this. Mike, thanks for having us here, but all the places that we've been. This is also part of the bonding. I think there's no better way to do it, no matter where you're from. And treasure this group. Look to one side and to the other side and behind in front of you. All these folks are special folks doing hard work with you every day, and will continue to do so going forward. And as far as ICN at 30, let's stay bold, keep creating the magic that we started in 2001, learning from each other to help our countries and our regions and our communities. So be bold, be brave, keep innovating, and keep being yourself. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. That was beautiful. Thanks to all of our panelists, to the audience that participated today. On a personal note, I think when I reflect back on the ICN, I think the ICN has been part of my journey as an antitrust enforcer since I was a case handler until now that I am chair. And I also just want to take a brief moment to recognize the work. I saw some names up there that Paul gave up, but the work of the international offices of the agencies. I think that those are the ones that allow us, the heads, to make informed decisions, to engage in the discussions. And I see Barbara Schultz here in the audience, and I think none of us can think of the ICN for the past 15 years without Andreas Munt, of course, but also with Barbara and Olav and all of the international teams and staff that accompany the agencies and that keep working extra and extra hours in order for this network to continue thriving. I would just like to, again, thank all of you for participating in this interactive session. And before we wrap up the panel, I would just like to share a short video message of a special guest that was meant to join this session, but who could not be with us today. So please, let's just share a 2-minute video that was sent by Teresa Rivera, Executive Vice President for Clean, Just, and Competitive Transition of the European Commission. Thank you. Let's watch it, and after that, we can close the session, and you're all free to go.
Dear colleagues and friends, we are celebrating the 25th anniversary of the International Competition Network. And I would like to start by congratulating but also by thanking all of you who have contributed over the years to making this network a great success. The International Competition Network is an important forum where competition authorities across the world learn from each other, build trust, and develop common approaches to shared challenges. Think about global and digital markets, sustainability, pro-competitive mergers facilitating innovative breakthroughs, something that is not to be taken for granted in today's world. Cooperation is so important. I would have liked it very much to be there with all of you. I think that being in Manila for this year's annual conference is important to celebrate the achievements and to reinforce our joint commitment to the International Competition Network. The European Commission is represented with a large delegation, lots of people that you know, and also our newly appointed Director General, Anthony Whelan, that will be leading this delegation. I'm glad that he's getting the chance to meet the fellow ICN colleagues so soon after taking up his role. I'm glad that the whole delegation is able to join, discuss, and learn once again from our colleagues. The work that we do together matters. The annual conference allows us to reinforce our ties as a global competition community and renew our commitment to multilateral cooperation. Faced with today's challenges, this is more important than ever. The latest news from Brussels is that we are launching a 2-month public consultation on our new draft merger guidelines, an ambitious reform to modernize the framework we have applied when assessing mergers since 2004. It is about how we will take into account a more complex world when evaluating mergers, while keeping competition at the heart of every decision. Without giving a blank check, we want to provide clarity to companies on showing the positive effects of a merger on investment, innovation, and resilience in Europe, taking into account a longer time frame. Because protecting competition in the modern economy means looking not only at the market as it exists today, but also those could emerge tomorrow. We could hope that this draft will also be of interest of our International Competition Network colleagues. We welcome your views. Let me thank the host and all of you for your commitment to effective and cooperative enforcement. Let me thank Andrea for her work to lead this conference. I wish you all a successful conference, and I look forward to our next opportunity to meet again.
Thank you. So with that, I hope you all enjoyed the session, and we conclude the first day of the ICN Annual Conference 2026 in Manila. Thank you again to our chair, Mike, and to the PCC, and I wish all of you a great evening and a successful day of work tomorrow. Thank you.
Congratulations to you as well, Miss Andrea Marvan. Since 5 a.m., everyone. May I have a photo opportunity, please, of the panelists of our ICN 25th anniversary session. A couple of reminders while this photo opportunity is happening. For tomorrow, the program will begin at 8:30 in the morning. The program will begin at 8:30 in the morning. As early as now, please take note of the breakout session schedule and the plenary presentations. We will end or aim to end at 5:45 tomorrow. That's 5:45 in the afternoon, so that you have enough time to prepare for the conference dinner that is happening at 7 p.m. Next, we would like to invite you to check out the MSME exhibits that's happening at the delegation hall. That is the place where you had lunch today. Explore Filipino goods and products, please. Take some home with you. And we even have a co-working space should you need it. Lastly, do you need transportation services? It is actually free for your use. If you are staying outside Marriott Hotel, there is a free shuttle service available. First come, first serve. All you have to do is coordinate with the secretariat team. Please make sure you only use in-city services. Do not go outside of Metro Manila. Don't get lost. Finally, for the cultural tour, please claim your t-shirts at the registration area. Enjoy the rest of the evening. This is only day one, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Isa Liton. It has been an absolute pleasure being your host today. I wish you a good night's sleep and have a wonderful day too tomorrow. Goodbye, everybody. Mabuhay! Thank you.